Okay, here we are now. What we're going to do now is now tackle these little pieces of body filler, and basically all I'm going to be using is my air hose to blow away the dust. I've got a simple rubber sanding block, a little flat one there, and the paper I'm using is 120 wet and dry, and that is basically all we're going to do to go around the whole car and prepare these dents. So let's make a start. As you can probably see there, I'm coming in it from all different angles, just so that I don't put any grooves in it. And coming in it from different angles gives you a more even coverage rather than just cutting in one way, because we have got a slight curve to this wing. Also clean. Now we're getting down to it now. Now one other thing I will say here is that on this wing, I don't know whether you can see, but when I'm rubbing the actual wing itself, the residue coming off is actually white. Now that is lacquer. That means that this wing is actually lacquered. As opposed to this bonnet, if I show you this bonnet, if I just rub down that bonnet there, you can see that it's actually red, which means that that bonnet isn't lacquered. That's just been painted with a normal paint, as opposed to this wing, which is probably original, which has got the original coat of lacquer on the top as well. So normally if you get any dents in a car or scratches, that is a sign that if you get like a little scratch on this car, for example, and when you start rubbing it down, it comes out white, the powder, that has actually been a lacquered wing. There's a good chance that you can buff that out. You can still buff out on a normal painted surface, but you've got to be careful because you're actually eating away at the surface and you could go down to the undercoat. So just showing you that there are two different paint systems on this car where it's obviously been touched up or painted before. Now I don't know if you can see, but we're just starting to feather the edging nicely now there. But just around the outside of, between the filler and the actual body paint, the original paint, there's still a little bit of a dark rim there, which indicates that's where the sanding block hasn't actually touched the surface yet. So we're trying to make this black rim disappear by going, we don't want to dig in there and just work on that area. We're trying to keep this as flat as possible and just basically let the sanded flat surface do the work with the contours of the wing until we actually get rid of that. It basically means that filler's a bit proud in the middle still, so just keep sanding. Again, just centralising the rubbing over the actual centre of the filler. I'm not concentrating on anything else, like sanding the other parts of the wing. The filler's just coming down in size. I'm hardly pushing it. The weight of the actual sanding block is doing the work, not me. Let's take another look at that. Now I can use your hand, use your whole of your hand. Now I can't feel a thing now. That feels absolutely lovely now. But just down there, as you can see, we've still got some old filler, so I'm just going to take them bits off. There you go, I'm actually happy with that. Now don't be too worried about the depth of these scratches. These will be filled in by the primer. We're going to put a high build primer on there before we actually put our base coat on, and all these scratches will be filled in by the primer, so don't worry too much about that. Some people use 80, I use 120 just to make the scratches a bit smaller actually, so it's less work when you're actually rubbing down the primer afterwards. But as you can see how long that took to do that one. That one is now ready for primer. So we'll have a little go on this one. Yep, I'm happy with that one. One thing when sanding these, especially modern cars compared to older cars, is that you don't want to be pushing too hard into the panel when you're sanding, because that distorts the panel when you're sanding, and that's why using a heavier grit paper like an 80 or a 120, you haven't really got to push, because the sander will cut through the filler and get you down to where you need to be without actually distorting the panel. don't know whether you can see that there, but here and here we've actually gone down to metal, and there's a bit of filler in the middle. Now that indicates to me that this door bit there is standing proud, that bit down is low, so I'm just going to sand a bit more, and I can actually feel an inconsistency there within that surface, so that could indicate that this bit here is sitting high, which means I might have to tap them bits down low again and just put another thin skim over there. So I'm just going to carry on a bit further. Yeah, I can feel that is actually sitting a bit higher there. That's why it's gone down to the metal either side. So what I'll do, I'll tap these areas down and just put a thin skim of stopper filler over again. Only take about 10 to 15 minutes to dry, and then just hit it again one final time. See, these are things you don't see when you normally sand down. Normally the dent was a bit, I think about here, I'm not too sure. And when it pushes in, sometimes most people just think you push a dent in, you just got to feel the dent. But a dent normally happens, and then sometimes around the edge it actually raises the outer levels of the dent. So I mean, if you drop a pebble in the water, the middle bit dips in, but around the outside of where the water goes in, it actually lifts up. And that's exactly the situation we've got here. And by using a flat surface going across this, it's actually highlighted this area as where the actual thing's sitting proud, and all we do is tap that back, put a bit of filler over it, and then we're good to go again. So let's go and get some filler and tap that down. Okay, so rubbing my hand over that, I can just feel that these areas are just a little bit high, and that's why it's so good to rub your hand over. Your hand does a lot of feeling, and it can feel any slight ridge, and the sanding has highlighted these two areas as being high. So let's just tap them back in. Yep, they're sitting below the surface now. Yep, again with these modern cars, the panels are so thin you really haven't got to hit them very hard at all. So let's mix some filler up. Now, before we actually put any filler on there, we want to make sure that that panel is actually clean and dry and free from any grease or dirt or dust or anything like that. So what I'm going to do, I've got a degreasing panel prep solution here, and all I'm basically going to do here is the area I'm going to be working on. I'm just going to degrease, clean the panel, because we don't want no problems with dust stopping any adhesion of our filler. There you go there. Once you put it on wet, and then just dry the area off afterwards. There you go, that panel now is ready for the application of filler. Now again, this is what they call a stopper filler. Whenever you take the lid off, and you'll see that this stuff does settle, so just give it a good stir up, make sure it's actually all mixed in. There's more than one element that makes this filler, and they do tend to separate if the can stood still for a while, so do give it a good stir. Now I'm not going to need a lot here, so probably something like that is all I'm going to need for this little application. Just take that off there. Now that is the actual main filler. Also squeeze the actual hardener, because again this tends to separate as well, so if it's been standing for a while, do make sure you give it a good squeeze. Now it's supposed to be a golf ball size to a pea size to hardener. So if that was a golf ball size, this would be the size of a pea, so you don't need a lot at all basically. That's nowhere near a golf ball size, so it's going to be even smaller than a pea size I would have thought. Probably something like that. In the hotter weather this will go off quicker. Now don't forget you want a clean spatula. The end of my spatula is very clean, so, and just mix it up until you see a uniform colour of everything. Everything's one colour basically. Don't forget this stuff will go off in about 3 minutes. So once you've kneaded it in, clean your panel first, make sure that's all ready to go so you can go straight onto your skim coat filler, or stopper in this case. And I'm happy that's all one colour now. So I'm going to go straight over and take you with me and fill. Again, you don't want to overload it with filler, just concentrate on the area that you're interested in. And there you go, I'm happy with that. So we'll let that set off now, probably about 15 minutes, and then we'll come back to that one. Okay, we're back onto the one on the door that we've tapped the high spots down and refilled. It's about 15 minutes later now, so I'm just going to go down and sand this and see what we're left with. There we go. Just for the slight little raised area in the middle here, sort of thing. So just lightly with a clean piece of sandpaper, just looking for the final blend. Again, not putting any pressure on this tool, just letting the cutting action of the sandpaper find the level. Fraction more on that. Again, no pushing, just letting the sandpaper do the work. And I'm looking for blurred edges that have got no ridges. That's what I'm looking for. I've got them all here now. Going in all directions, lightly. And that is a perfect finished job. As you remember, that area there and that area there was bare metal once we rubbed down before, and we tapped that down with a hammer and then put a coat of thin skim of stopper filler over the top, and now as you can see there's no raised bits of metal sticking up. All edges are feathered in. That will take a nice coat of primer, that now, a couple of coats of primer, a slight rub down with 600 paper, and that'll be ready for the top coat, the base coat rather.